The sound of their screams still rings in my ears. Not the kind of screams you hear in an argument or a nightmare. These were real, desperate, terrified. My mother's voice cracked first, shrieking as something shattered in the hallway. My sisters followed, high-pitched, full of panic, calling for help that would never come. They weren't ready for what was happening, but I was. I had waited for this moment. Funny, isn't it? How quickly the predator becomes prey when truth slams through their perfectly curated world. Just a year ago, I was begging them, crying, soaked, clutching my 5-year-old son in my arms while the sea tried to drag us under. I remember my mother's eyes as she leaned over the edge of that boat. Cold, flat. You will be erased, she whispered. No emotion, no hesitation. Then Sana, my sister, laughed like it was all a game. Goodbye, useless ones, she said. And then they were gone. The boat sped away, white foam in its trail, while I tried to keep my son's tiny head above water. But let me take you back, just before the waves swallowed our lives. Just before my story changed forever. The sun was glittering on the surface of the sea. Birds flew overhead. The sky was painfully blue. Sana posed for selfies with her wine glass, and my mother flipped through a magazine like we were lounging poolside. It looked like a postcard. A perfect day. I remember sitting there, trying to convince myself that this was a good thing. That maybe my family was trying. Maybe I wasn't the forgotten mock daughter anymore. Maybe they were finally letting me and my son in. Little Rayan giggled as the wind whipped through his curly hair. He clung to my arm with both hands as the speedboat picked up pace, cutting through the waves. "Mama, this is like flying!" he shouted, his voice dancing above the motor. I smiled. I actually smiled. It lasted 10 more minutes. One moment we were flying across the sea. The next, I felt the push. 2 sharp hands against my back. My body lurched forward. My instinct kicked in, but it was too late. I screamed as we hit the water, icy, violent, all-consuming. I fought to the surface, gasping, choking. I turned in every direction, heart pounding, eyes burning with salt. My arms flailed until I felt him, Rayan, sputtering beside me, crying. That was the last time I saw that boat. They didn't look back. They thought I would die out there, that the ocean would take me quietly. No trace, no witnesses, just a mother and her son gone. But I didn't die. I swam, bled, and screamed into the horizon until someone heard me. And now it's my turn. Their screams were just the beginning. People love to talk about unconditional love, especially when it comes to family. But in my world, love always came with terms, with performances, with silent rules I never seemed to understand. My name is Amara. I'm a single mom. And for most of my life, I've been the invisible daughter in a house that valued image more than blood. My parents were wealthy. Not just comfortable, wealthy. I'm talking about private schools, vacation homes, and charity galas, kind of rich. My father ran a logistics empire. My mother ran everything else. Us mostly. I was the eldest, but you wouldn't know it by how I was treated. From the day Sana was born, it was like I became background noise. She was their golden child. Pretty, loud, charming in the way rich people love. She danced in glitter and praise, while I sat with books and questions they never had time to answer. When I got pregnant at 24, everything fell apart. Rayan's father left before I even had a chance to tell him. I was terrified but determined to raise my son alone. I came to my parents, not for money, but just support. My mother didn't even let me finish the sentence. "This is what happens when you chase fantasies instead of finding a husband," she snapped. Sana stood beside her, freshly manicured, holding a green juice, smirking. "Well, at least now you'll have something to do," she said. "You always needed purpose." I remember clutching my stomach protectively, like I had to shield my unborn son from their words. I walked out of that house with nothing but a second-hand suitcase and shame. From then on, I was the burden they whispered about. The "don't be like your sister" example they gave at their parties. Still, I tried to keep some kind of connection for Rayan's sake. I wanted him to know his grandparents, even if I had to swallow my pride to make it happen. But every visit was a reminder. They treated him like a stranger, a cute accessory at best. My mother would wrinkle her nose at his clothes. My father would ask questions like, "Is he eating enough?" But not in a caring way, in a judgmental, you can't even provide kind of way. And Sana? She loved playing the role of the successful one. Lavish wedding, business class vacations, always arriving 10 minutes late to family dinners in designer heels. She used my failures like trophies. Her favorite game was offer me help in front of others, just loud enough for everyone to hear me politely refuse. I worked 3 jobs. I cleaned houses, tutored kids, ran errands for old ladies in my building. I never begged them, not once, but they never stopped looking at me like I was dirt on their polished floors. Still, I kept showing up for Rayanne until the day they invited us on that boat. That was the moment I realized some families don't just neglect you, they erase you. It started with a phone call. Out of nowhere, my mother's name flashed on my screen. I almost didn't pick up, but something about it tugged at me. A foolish hope, maybe, or just exhaustion from always carrying the weight alone. I answered, and to my surprise, her voice wasn't cold. It was soft, like honey over thorns. Amara, she said, we were thinking it's time we spent more time with you and Rayanne. I froze. I'd gone years without hearing a sentence like that from her. I waited for the twist, the conditions, the little stings she usually wove into her words. But they never came. We're taking the boat out on Sunday. The weather's beautiful. It'll be peaceful. Why don't you and the boy come along? She added, like she was inviting us for tea. I glanced over at Rayanne, sprawled on the living room rug, building a tower of plastic blocks. He looked up at me and smiled. Something about his little face, so full of innocence, pushed me to say yes. Maybe this was her trying. Maybe people could change. Sunday came and so did the doubts. They arrived quietly, like shadows under the sun. When we reached the marina, everything was pristine. The boat sparkled like a floating mansion. My mother was already on board, dressed in white linen, oversized sunglasses hiding her eyes. She kissed the air beside my cheek, a gesture so unfamiliar it made my skin prickle. Sana was there too, of course, sun-kissed, loud, dressed like a magazine ad. She greeted Rayanne with fake enthusiasm, crouching to his level with a voice that didn't quite match her smile. Look at you. A real sailor today, huh? She said, tousling his curls. Rayanne hid behind my leg. He never liked her. Still, I convinced myself it was fine. I told myself to relax, to let go. But the small things piled up. No life jackets in sight. The captain, an older man I remembered from past summers, was gone, replaced by a younger guy with a nervous smile who didn't speak much. My mother brought out orange juice for Rayanne and wine for us. I noticed her glance when I took a sip. I felt a chill run down my spine. They kept looking at each other, Sana and my mother. Silent nods. Quick, subtle gestures, as if there was a conversation happening just beneath the surface. I'm glad you came, my mother said suddenly, placing her hand over mine. You're still part of the family, Amara. We haven't forgotten you. The way she said it didn't feel like comfort. It felt like a sentence. I tried to smile to shake the unease off. I sat close to Rayanne, my fingers lightly brushing his arm every few minutes, just to feel that he was still there, real, warm. The boat picked up speed. The sky stretched wide and open above us. Everything looked perfect, but my gut screamed otherwise. And deep down I knew. They didn't bring us here to bond. They brought us here to vanish. The sun shimmered on the water like a promise. Rayanne leaned over the side of the boat, giggling as the wind played with his curls. Look, Mama, the water sparkles. I smiled for him. I even let myself believe for a moment that maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe they were truly trying to reconnect. Maybe it was a fresh start, a foolish, fragile hope. Sana was at the wheel, her oversized sunglasses hiding everything. My mother stood behind her, arms crossed, lips tight like they were holding in something unspeakable. Rayanne tugged my hand. Can I dip my feet just a little? Only if I hold you, I said, lifting him so he could sit on the edge with his tiny feet brushing the surface. His laughter echoed across the sea like music. Then everything stopped. A shadow moved behind me. A whisper brushed my ear. You will be erased, my mother said. I didn't even get to turn fully before I felt 2 sets of hands shove hard against my back. The world tilted. Rayanne screamed. Cold swallowed us. The ocean punched the breath from my lungs as I hit the surface. I reached blindly, heart screaming louder than my voice. My arms caught Rayanne's slippery little body, and I pulled him to my chest. He was coughing, crying, terrified. Above, the boat didn't stop. It drifted, slowly like nothing had happened. I could see them. My mother leaned against the railing, unmoved. Sanaa was beside her, sipping from a glass of wine. And then Sanaa whispered, loud enough for the sea to carry it. Goodbye, useless ones. I screamed their names, cursed them, begged. Nothing. They turned away. I wrapped my arms tighter around Rayanne, trying to keep his head above water. My limbs ached already, dragged by the weight of wet clothes and the panic pressing down on me like a stone. Shoot, baby, I've got you, I kept saying over and over, though my teeth were chattering and the salt was stinging my eyes. Mama's here. Mama's not going anywhere. He clung to me like a baby koala, shivering. There was no land in sight, no other boats, just the endless sea and the cruel sky. But I didn't let go. I couldn't. Minutes passed, then an hour, maybe more. Time bent strangely in survival. My muscles screamed. My lips cracked. My thoughts began to blur except for one. They tried to kill us, and they meant it. But we were still breathing, still alive. They had no idea the mistake they just made. Because I would not drown quietly. I would not disappear. Not me. Not my son. And by the time I was done, the only thing that would sink was their perfect little world. My limbs were jelly. My skin burned from the sun and salt. Each wave felt like a slap, each breath a battle. But I held Rayanne, my son, above the water like he was my heart beating outside my chest. He had stopped crying. That scared me more than anything. His head rested on my shoulder, his breathing shallow. Mama, he whispered once, voice dry and small. I'm here, baby, I choked. I'm right here. But I didn't know how much longer I could keep that promise. The sea was endless. The sky offered no mercy. The boat was long gone, like our place in the family. Like our names, erased. My legs cramped. My arms quivered. Salt stung my eyes so bad I saw mirages. Sometimes I imagined we were being lifted. Sometimes I thought I heard motors. But nothing came. We floated in hell. And still, I whispered to Rayanne every few minutes, just so he'd hear my voice and believe we were going to be okay, even if I didn't. Then, through the haze, I heard something real. A sputter. A hum. A distant engine. I forced my head up. There, on the horizon, a boat. Small. Wooden. Moving slow. I screamed, but my voice cracked and failed. So I raised one arm. Just one. Like a flag of desperation. The boat veered. Closer. A man shouted. Two more leaned over the edge. They shouted again. Relief and panic crashed inside me like a tidal wave. Hands reached. I couldn't even lift Rayanne anymore. Someone else did. My baby vanished over the edge as I blacked out. When I woke, we were on a deck. Blankets. Water. A cracked voice in a language I barely understood. A woman patting my face gently, her eyes filled with concern. Rayanne was sleeping, safe beside me. Alive. Alive. And something inside me, something deep, snapped awake. I had begged for love from people who'd only ever given me cruelty. I'd trusted blood over instinct. I'd clung to hope like it was oxygen. But no more. I felt it in my bones. The burn. The promise. They thought I would drown. They thought I'd vanish like a mistake they could erase. But I didn't drown. I endured. And now I would rise. Not for revenge. Not for anger. But for justice. For truth. For Rayanne, who would never again feel like he didn't belong. I was done being the forgotten one. They threw me into the ocean, thinking I'd sink. But they didn't realize. You can't drown a storm. I didn't go back. Not to the house, not to the name, not to the life where I was less than. The fishermen dropped us at a coastal shelter far from the city. No questions asked. A kind woman named Soraya, who ran the center, took one look at my sunburned face and Rayanne's hollow eyes and gave us a room without a word. We stayed. I told no one who I was. Changed our names on every form. I became Mira and Rayanne became Zane. Just like that, Amara died quietly. And in her place, someone new began to rise. The first few weeks, I could barely move. My muscles ached, and my spirit felt threadbare. But I cleaned floors at night when everyone slept. I taught myself to walk without limping. I made breakfast for the other women. I volunteered for every hard task. I watched. I listened. I learned. Soraya noticed. She gave me a job at the front desk. Then helped me get certified for basic office work. A local NGO offered training in digital marketing. I took the course with fire in my veins. I worked while Rayan slept beside me, his hand always touching mine like a tether to this world. I sold handmade items online. Then I built websites for others. I used fake names, ghost accounts. I buried every trace of my old life. But in my mind, I remembered every detail of that boat. Every word they said, every glance they exchanged. I kept the pain close, not to suffer, but to sharpen. Each day, I felt my body return. My heart strengthen. My will harden. People called me kind, hardworking, talented. They didn't know I was also quietly becoming dangerous. They didn't know I woke every night from dreams of the ocean. Only now I wasn't drowning. I was standing, watching them sink, because I hadn't forgotten. They thought they ended my story out there in the sea. But really, that was only the first page. 2 years later, I walked into my old hometown like a stranger with power in her heels. No one recognized me. Not the sleek woman with a confident stride, glowing skin, and piercing eyes. Not the one who wore silence like armor and smiled like she knew every secret in the room. Because I did. I was no longer Amara, the forgotten daughter. Now I was Mariam Khan, an investor from Dubai looking for real estate deals and digital branding opportunities in high-end circles. A fictional name with very real influence. My first move? I bought the house next door to my parents' mansion. Cash. Then I introduced myself to my mother at a charity gala. She looked straight through me, complimented my dress, not knowing she once called me useless in that very shade of blue. I shook her hand and smiled. From there, I got closer. Sana, my golden sister, now ran an events company, funded by my parents, barely profitable, leaking money. I offered her a branding partnership through one of my shell companies. She couldn't say yes fast enough. Within weeks, I had access to her records, her clients, and most importantly, her lies. Late payments, fake invoices, sketchy offshore transfers tied to my mother's charity. Oh, how the mighty had gotten sloppy. At night, I watched them from my upstairs window. My mother sipping wine by the pool. Sanaa yelling at the housekeeper over tulips. The image of power, all built on rot. They still thought I was dead. Disappeared. A chapter they closed without guilt. But I was living in their blind spot, studying their weaknesses, feeding their egos, setting every piece like a chessboard. They had no idea the soft daughter they discarded had become the architect of their unraveling. And I didn't rush. No, I wanted them comfortable, proud, smug, because the higher they stood, the harder they'd fall. And when the fall came, it would echo louder than the screams they left me within the sea. The day of reckoning arrived like a storm, quiet at first, but building, fast and unforgiving. It began with a phone call to my mother's charity, the one she'd always used as a front. I had taken the time to gather every incriminating detail. Misappropriated funds, fake donations, offshore accounts tied to the people who'd enabled her and Sanaa's luxury lifestyle. With the evidence in hand, I sent an anonymous tip to the tax authorities and a few prominent journalists. The storm picked up speed. The next day, Sanaa's company was hit with an audit. Out of nowhere, my old family accountant showed up at her office, with papers in hand detailing every transaction, every dodgy deal. The shock on her face when she saw the police walk in, pure panic. She didn't know I'd been watching every corner of her empire crumble. As the hours passed, news outlets picked up the story of the fraudulent charity. My mother was at the center of the scandal. Her reputation, carefully curated for decades, was being torn apart in front of the world. The phone started ringing nonstop. Her colleagues, the very people who'd once kissed her ring, began to turn their backs. Her image, a facade, was shattering piece by piece. And all the while, I stood back watching the chaos unfold. It didn't end there. My connections in real estate and media were too good. With a few well-placed calls, I arranged for the press to catch her at the most damaging moment. The footage of her yelling at a reporter, denying the accusations, was all anyone needed to confirm her guilt. By the time she tried to save face, it was too late. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I called her. My mother, the woman who had whispered death to me, the one who had betrayed her own flesh and blood. She picked up, her voice trembling, unsure if she was speaking to a ghost. "You think this is over?" I asked, my voice cold, steady. There was a long pause. Then a whisper. "Amara?" "No. Miriam. Miriam, please, You should have left me in the water," I said, my voice cutting through her pleas like a knife. "Because now you will drown in your own lies." Her frantic screams echoed through the phone, but no one was there to save her. Not this time. Not when it was me, her own daughter, who had become her worst nightmare. And then for the first time I let myself smile. The fall was complete.